Samuel. We're going to try to cover chapter 13 and 14 this morning. There's a lot here, so we'll get through it as best we can, and we'll at least get through 13 and hit the highlights of 14. So, most of you might, I don't know how many of you know, actually, my wife's from Virginia, the southern hills of Virginia, and sometimes, the Virginia part of her comes out, and she says, "Hey, Todd, give me a butterfly kiss." And I was like, "No, I don't. Give me a butterfly kiss." And she's kind of rough with her butterfly kisses. Can you see? It's kind of... couldn't help it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's turn to chapter 13. I'm going to kind of do this the way that we did for the middle school, the high school class. I'm just going to read a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about that section of verses, read a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Move us down just a little. And to set the stage for this, again, we're still talking about David, his family. David had been made king, then made king of Judah, made king over all Israel, won a civil war, got a new capital. Just things were going very well for him. And then we had the situation with him and Bathsheba. And now since then, things kind of get rough. And this is just a little bit more of that. So, chapter 13, verse 1. Now it was after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Okay, so Amnon is by a different wife than Absalom and Tamar. Absalom and Tamar have the same mother, and Amnon has a different mother. They're all sons of David. And who knows what... out of all of David's kids, where does Amnon come at in the order? Anybody have a guess? Just throw out a number. Who said what? I don't know if to say higher or lower. He's older than that. So he's not 3, he must be 1 or 2. Which one? He's 1. Yeah. He's the oldest, so he's... just kind of keep that in mind. He's the oldest, so where do you think he thinks of himself in the order of, to be king? He's next in line. He's the crown prince, and you'll see pretty quickly he probably was a little bit spoiled. Okay, who knows where Absalom comes at in the order? You can take a guess again. Steve, take another guess. Your same guess you just took. Yeah, good job. Absalom's number 3. There was another one, I should have wrote it down, but I think it's called Gibeah, but you don't hear much of him, so don't know, other than he was born and who he was born to. That's about it. Okay, verse 2. Amnon was so frustrated because of his sister Tamar that he made himself ill, for she was a virgin, and it seemed hard to Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very shrewd man. Okay, so Jonadab is a cousin of, anyway, a first or second cousin. I mean, they're just, David, you'll see, uses a lot of his family in his government. So, Jonadab, when it says here, is a very shrewd man. Does anybody else's version have anything different besides shrewd, crafty? And you'll see here in a little bit, it almost seems like he's sneaky, weaselly. Okay, so in verse 4, Jonadab, said to him, "O son of the king, why are you so depressed morning after morning? Will you not tell me?" Then Amnon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, the sister of my brother Absalom." Okay, we'll come back to this. Right now he says that he's in love with Tamar. And how does he describe Tamar? What words does Amnon used to describe Tamar? It's the what? Right there in the verse. Sister of my brother. So what is Amnon and Tamar? It's his sister too, but he doesn't use that way. He doesn't say, oh, I'm in love with my sister. He kind of twists things a little bit. He says, I'm in love with Tamar, the sister of my brother. Just semantics, I think, a little bit there, just kind of twisting the words a little bit to make it not seem as bad. Later on, we'll see how he twists the words again, or uses words again. Verse 5, Jonadab, that's the cousin, then said to him, lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill. When your father comes to see you, say to him, please let my sister Tamar come and give me some food to eat, and let her prepare the food in my sight that I may see it and eat it from her hand. Okay, that's where the Weasley sneakiness, I think, starts coming in of Jonadab the cousin. Verse 6, so Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, please let my sister Tamar come and make me a couple of cakes in my sight that I may eat it from her hand. Okay, is Eric? Okay, Eric's here. He grew up in the same area as me, went to the same church. He knows my dad a little bit. I'm trying to think if many other people here know my dad. But my dad was a ex-football coach. He was a principal in the days when they still would use the paddle, and that's how he used that quite a bit. His dad, my grandpa, was a sergeant in the Army before he was a foreman at a factory. And, that's kind of the male guides I had growing up. Eric, what do you think my dad would say if I laid down in bed and, let someone come here and just fix some cakes in my sight and just I'm so sick, Dad, that let them, I can't even feed myself. Just let them, feed from my hand. My dad would have grabbed me and, just, not to say, he's not a bad guy, but I mean, that's just his mindset. Get up. What do you mean feed somebody from your hand? I mean, it's just, my dad would not have dealt with this very well. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sister, and think about my mom, probably the same way. Yeah, my whole family would have just not dealt with that attitude, that, woe is me. And, a lot of you probably think the same thing, but so how does David, let's look at verse 7. What's David's reaction? Does he grab Amnon and say, get up and come on, I don't want to say be tough, but just get over it. Verse 7, then David sent to the house of Tamar, saying, go now to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him. Okay, you guys tell me, how do you think, okay, so you see now David kind of gives in, does it? How do you think, this little bit, these 7 verses so far of Amnon, how do you picture Amnon and his relationship with David? Spoiled. Like, probably feels entitled. I'm the next in line. I'm, the crown prince. And his dad just gives in to him a lot. One of the commentaries I read said this is a pattern with David with his children, and we'll see it more later on. And it said, perhaps it's because, early in his king career, he was off fighting wars a lot. He wasn't around his family. Maybe it's because he had multiple wives, multiple kids from the different wives. He couldn't spend, enough time with each one. So I'll be the good father, and I'll just give in to whatever they want. And we'll see here in a little bit, not that he didn't love his kids, but maybe didn't raise them the right way. Okay. All right. Verse 8. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house and was lying down, and he was lying down. And she took dough, kneaded it, made cakes in his sight, and baked the cakes. That just paints more of the picture. He's just laying down while she's working. He's just watching her. That just seems weird. Verse 9. She took the pan and dished them out before him, but he refused to eat. Okay, so this is where he shows more of his character. No, I'm not going to eat. Amnon said, have everyone go out for me. So everyone went out for him. He's got this plan in place. Verse 10, then Amnon said to Tamar, bring the food into the bedroom that I may eat from your hand. So Tamar took the cakes which she had made and brought them into the bedroom to her brother Amnon. Verse 11, when she brought them to him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, come lie with me, my sister. Verse 12, but she answered him, no, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. As for me, where could I get rid of my reproach? And as for you, you will be like one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. Okay, so Tamar has it's kind of the voice of reason here, saying, no, don't do this. And this is a horrible story. You know, it's just despicable, and it's gross what he's doing here. This whole plan that he had, and just so thought out. And where she says, it's almost like she has better foresight than he does. She says, I won't be able to get rid of my reproach, but you will be like a fool, you'll just feel foolish, and you'll be like a fool in Israel. Verse 14, one part too. In verse 13 it says, now therefore speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. When I first read that, I thought, well, maybe David would say they could be married. But in Leviticus, there's a law that half-siblings can't marry. So one of the commentaries said that maybe she was just trying to buy time to get away from him. But again, that's just kind of conjecture. Verse 15. Then Amnon hated her. Verse 14. However, he would not listen to her. Since he was stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. Verse 15. Then Amnon hated her with very great hatred. For the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, get up and go away. Okay, so verse 15, when Amnon hated her with very great hatred and hated her more than he loved her, go back to verses 2 and 1 where it says that he made himself sick because he said he loved her. Knowing these two sections now, did he love her? Was that love? What did he? Lust, yeah. He saw something that he wanted and he couldn't have it, so he just dwelt on it so much that he made himself sick. It's lust. And he saw something he thought was beautiful, that was pleasing to the eye, kind of like, the fruit on the tree. And once he had done this deed, he felt guilty, and so she became a reminder of what he had done. He felt, like she said, you're going to feel foolish after this. Don't do this, and that's exactly what happened. So he wanted her away because now she's a reminder of what he had done wrong. And this is where he does more wrong things. So he says, get up and go away. But she said to him, verse 16, no, because this wrong in sending me away is greater than the other that you have done to me. Yet he would not listen to her. Then he called his young man who attended him and said, now throw this woman out of my presence and lock the door behind her. Okay, remember earlier on, what had he called Tamar when he said, Tamar is not my sister, my brother's sister. Now he changes what he calls her here. What's he call her here? Yeah, it says this woman. And Aaron, did you say that in a video you saw that it was, the word here was even worse than that? It was. Yeah. So throw it out. Throw this thing out. He's using words to, devalue her, I think, so that he doesn't feel as bad. Just, again, showing that kind of spoiled attitude, and it's just a bad story. It's a story in the Bible. I don't want to say that it's just, what's a better way to say it? It's a harsh story in the Bible. But there's harsh things in life too. Okay, now throw this woman out of my presence and lock the door behind her. He's just trying to say, I'm done with this. I'm going to forget this. I'm going to go on. Who knows how many times in his life he's done bad things, and just because he's the prince, the king's son, the prince, he just said, forget about it. I don't have to take consequences for my actions or change. Verse 18, now she had on a long-sleeved garment, for in this manner the virgin daughters of the king dressed themselves in robes. Then his attendant took her out and locked the door behind her. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore her long-sleeved garment which was on her, and she put her hand on her head and went away, crying aloud as she went. And some of the things I read said this is just, instead of her trying to just act like nothing happened and this is, just go on about her life, this was to show people that, this bad thing had happened to her. By tearing the garments, it was an outward signal to people of her status, what had happened to her. She wasn't going to just say nothing happened, I guess. Verse 20, then Absalom, her brother, said to her, has Amnon your brother been with you? But now keep silent, my sister, for he is your brother. Do not take this matter to heart. So Tamar remained and was desolate in her brother Absalom's house. This verse is kind of hard, I guess, for me. I wasn't sure if he's comforting her or what, because first he says, don't say anything. I thought, well, that's kind of bad. But then he takes her into his own house to kind of take care of her. And we'll see that later on he has a plan, too, to get revenge. Okay, and then this is probably one of the worst verses, or worst things that David did here, verse 21. Now, when King David heard of all these matters, he was very angry, period. And it doesn't say that he did anything about it. It just says he was very angry. It doesn't say he talked to Amnon or comforted Tamar or punished Amnon. He was just angry. Verse 22, but Absalom did not speak to Amnon either good or bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. Okay, now it came about after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Bel Hazor, which is near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. So 2 years go by. So let's say my brother BJ does something bad to me, and today is February 12th, 2023. I hold on to that until February 12th, 2025. So picture how long in the future 2 years is. For 2 years, I just maul on it and plan and want to get my revenge, and that's just a long time to hold on to things. And okay, so, and also the sheep shear part. They said that think about the nation of Israel, some agriculture, but a lot of herding and sheep's and different cattle, camel, is a lot of their wealth. Has anyone here ever seen a sheep get sheared? Okay, got a few. My grandpa Bates, that's my gentler, kinder grandpa on the other side of the family. He had a farm, and I remember being really young, and he would take them into he had a couple big barns, but one smaller barn. And he'd take it into the smaller barn, and he would sit down, and he would grab the sheep, and just wrestle them, turn them upside down, shave. And he had these great big clippers. And, the wool would just be falling off, and then he'd flip it over, and it's kind of kicking and trying to, it's rough. And then he'd have 25 of those to do. And I just remember thinking, he might be my kinder, gentler, quiet grandpa, but I don't want to make him mad either, He was just so, and just kind of manhunt. But the pile of wool would just, build up. And that's what me and my brother and sister, we would kind of then sweep it over here, and we put it in these bags. But yeah, it's a, there's a lot of things you forget as a kid, but isn't it funny how some things just kind of make a real impression on you, just kind of burn in the memory. Like that was, I do remember the sheep shearing. But the sheep shearing was kind of a big time. It's kind of, okay, so they put this time into these sheep, and now they're going to shear them, have the wool, kill some also. So this is kind of where they're making they're seeing the profit, okay? So it's a festive time, and they have feasts. And Absalom is going to have a feast. Verse 24. How are we doing? Okay. Absalom came to the king and said, "Behold, now your servant has sheep shearers. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant." But the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, we should not all go, for we will be burdensome to you." Although he urged him, he would not go, but blessed him. Then Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon go with us." And the king said to him, Why should he go with you?" So, reading this, I think David must have some kind of understanding that there's, animosity between Absalom and Amnon. And even here he asks, "Why should he go with you?" But when Absalom urged him, he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Verse 28, Absalom commanded his servants, saying, "See now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say to you, 'Strike Amnon,' then put him to death. Do not fear. Have I not myself commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant." The servants of Absalom did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and each mounted his mule and fled. Okay, so they're having their festival. Absalom waits till Amnon is kind of merry or drunk with wine, and then he has him killed. One thing there, too, I would be a little bit nervous if I was one of his servants and he said, "Kill the next in line." I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know about this." But he kind of even says, "Don't be afraid. I've told you." So kind of Absalom's even starting here to maybe push forth his power a little bit. That, listen to me. Don't be afraid of the king. Okay. Verse 30, now it was while they were on their way that the report came to David saying, "Absalom has struck down all the king's sons, and not one of them is left." So just like the game Telephone, how things kind of get changed when it gets around the circle. By the time it got to King David, it wasn't that Amnon had died. It was all the king's sons were dead. Verse 31, the king arose, tore his clothes, and by the way, Solomon is born by this time. And you don't know how old Solomon was. Was he... he's at least 2, right? Because 2 years have gone by and he's already born. So was he a 10-year-old? Was he a 4-year, 5-year-old? Solomon was one of those sons that was there. Then the king arose, tore his clothes, and lay on the ground. All his servants were standing by with clothes torn. Jonadab, that's the cousin now, son of Shemiah, David's brother, responded, "Do not let my lord suppose they have put to death all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon alone is dead, because by the intent of Absalom this has been determined since the day that he violated his sister Tamar." So here's the cousin who gave the sneaky Weasley advice before. He's here, I guess, trying to bring good news. "Oh no, not all your sons are dead, just one's dead." Is he trying to get in favor with the king some more? Verse 33. "Now therefore, do not let my lord the king take the report to heart. Namely, all the king's sons are dead, for only Amnon is dead." Now Absalom had fled, and the young man who was the watchman raised his eyes and looked, and behold, many people were coming from the road behind him by the side of the mountain. Jonadab said to the king, "Behold, the king's sons have come. According to your servant's word, so it has happened." Kind of giving himself a little pat on the back. 36, as soon as he had finished speaking, behold, the king's sons came and lifted their voices and wept. And also the king and all his servants wept very bitterly. Now Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom had fled and gone to Geshur and was there for 3 years. The heart of King David longed to go out to Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon since he was dead. All right, the reason he went to this king is, this king is his grandpa. This king had a daughter who married David, and she is the mother of Tamar and Absalom. So Absalom goes to his grandpa's kingdom, and that's where he's kind of hiding out for safety. He's there for 3 years. All right, any comments? I know this is a lot, and we're trying to buzz through it. Any comments or questions so far? All right. Yeah. And we'll see here in a second that he has a tough time punishing any of his kids. But yeah, and I think that's a good lesson for us. Is it easy to punish your kids, Stephanie? You sometimes. It's, I don't know. I know. Okay, so I have a 17, a 15, a 13-year-old, and I look back almost daily and think, okay, here's where I messed up today with this child, or was I too harsh, not harsh enough? Did I not pick a battle? Should I picked a battle there? And it's daily. So over the 17 years I've had kids, there's so many times where you look back and you wonder if you did the right thing and stuff. It's hard, but yeah. David really messed up. So I don't know if it should make me feel better or what, but there's definitely extreme examples of what not to do. So, anything else? Okay. All right, so we're going to try to get through this next chapter quickly, because I want to get to a few things here at the end when Absalom and David kind of make up, sort of, I guess. All right, verse 14. Now Joab, who is another relative of David's, by the way. I should have reviewed it, but I think it's a cousin of David's, I believe. Now Joab, the son of, or might have been a nephew. It's a nephew or cousin. It's not a niece, I know that. Now Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was inclined toward Absalom. So Joab sent to Tekoa. Okay, and who is Joab? Joab is who in the government? Who is he in the government? He's the army leader. Why would he be worried about Absalom living in another country? So the firstborn is dead. Amnon's dead. Why would he be worried about Absalom living in another country? If David were to die, what could happen? Yeah, Absalom could, with his grandpa's help, maybe with his army, come back and try to take over. Again, we don't know what happened to the second-born son. Maybe he's already passed. Maybe something else. There's not much about him. But Absalom would have a claim to the throne. And Absalom right now has bitter thoughts towards David. So Joab's thinking, for the safety of the country, we've got to do something here. All right. So Joab sent to Tekoa and brought a wise woman from there and said to her, "Please pretend to be a mourner and put on your mourning garments now, and do not anoint yourself with oil, but be like a woman who's been in mourning for the dead many days. Then go to the king and speak to him in this manner." So Joab put the words in her mouth. Now when the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, she fell on her face to the ground and prostrated herself and said, "Help, O king." The king said to her, "What is your trouble?" And she answered, "Truly, I am a widow, for my husband is dead. Your your maidservant had two," here she's going to tell a story. This is a story that Joab had her tell. And remember a few chapters ago, after David and Bathsheba, Nathan came and told David a story about a guy who had hundreds and thousands of sheep, and a guy who had one sheep that was so precious to him that it ate with his kids at his table, and he I think he slept with them. And then that rich guy took that poor guy's one sheep and killed it and served it to a guest. And David got so angry, he said, that guy should be put to death. And Nathan said, well, that guy is you. So Nathan used a story to get a point driven to David, to let David realize his own fault. So this is going to kind of happen again here. Your maidservant had 2 sons, but the 2 of them struggled together in the field, and there was no one to separate them. So one struck the other and killed him. Now behold, the whole family has risen against your maidservant. And they said, hand over the one who struck his brother, that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed, and destroy the heir also. So she's a widow, and it says she has 2 sons. One killed the other. She has one left. He's the only family or lineage she has left, and people want to kill him for murdering the other brother. Thus they will extinguish my coal which is left, so as to leave my husband neither name nor remnant on the face of the earth. Then the king said to the woman, go to your house, and I'll give orders concerning you. The woman of Tekoa said to the king, O my lord the king, the iniquity is on me and my father's house, but the king and his throne are guiltless. So the king said, whoever speaks to you, bring him to me, and he will not touch you any more. Then she said, please let the king remember the Lord your God, so that the avenger of blood will not continue to destroy. Otherwise they will destroy my son. And he said, as the Lord lives, not one hair of your son shall fall to the ground. Then she presses on. Then the woman said, please let your maidservant speak a word to my lord the king. And he said, speak. The woman said, why then have you planned such a thing against the people of God? For in speaking this word, the king is as one who is guilty, in that the king does not bring back his banished one. So now she's kind of flipping the story. For we will surely die and are like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Yet God does not take away life, but plans ways so that the banished one will not be cast out from him. Now the reason I have come to speak this word to my lord the king is that the people have made me afraid. So your maidservant said, let me now speak to the king. Perhaps the king will perform the request of his maidservant. For the king will hear and deliver his maidservant from the hand of the man who would destroy both me and my son from the inheritance of God. Then your maidservant said, please let the word of my lord the king be comforting, for as the angel of God, so is my lord the king to discern good and evil, and may the Lord your God be with you. Then the king answered and said to the woman, please do not hide anything from me that I'm about to ask you. And the woman said, let my lord the king speak. And this is where David, a light bulb kind of, at some point in this story went on. He said, so the king said, is the hand of Joab with you in all this? He's basically saying, okay, did Joab put you up to this? So he must have had some discussion with David before, and David always must have shut him down. So Joab kind of went a different route to make David realize, what he should do different. And the woman replied, as your soul lives, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or to the left from anything that my lord the king has spoken. Indeed, it was your servant Joab who commanded me, and it was he who put all these words in the mouth of your maidservant. In order to change the appearance of things, your servant Joab has done this thing. But my lord is wise, like the wisdom of the angel of God, to know all that is in the earth. Okay. Then the king said to Joab, behold, now I will surely do this thing. Go therefore, bring back the young man Absalom. Joab fell on his face to the ground, prostrated himself, and blessed the king. Then Joab said, today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, O my lord the king, in that the king has performed the request of his servant. So we're about to see here, I want to get this in real quick, one reason why why Absalom's popular, okay? So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. However, the king said, let him turn to his own house, let him not see my face. So Absalom turned to his own house, did not see the king's face. So as he's coming in Jerusalem, David's like, I'm bringing him back, but I'm not going to see him. Have him go to his house. So it's been 2 years since Amnon died, and then 3 more years since Absalom's been gone. So it's been 5 years since Amnon's death total, okay? Now in all Israel, no one was as handsome as Absalom, so highly praised from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no defect on him. So this guy is a good-looking guy. When he cut the hair of his head, and it was at the end of every year that he cut it, for it was heavy on him, so he cut it, he weighed the hair on his head at 200 shekels by the king's weight. So it's, commentary said about 5 pounds. That's a lot of hair. Every year, this guy's, he's like the Prince Charming look, long flowing hair, handsome. What was it about, think back. What was it about King Saul that was outstanding that Israel liked? Do you remember when we first get introduced to King Saul? Okay, it says he was like tall, number one, but it was like his appearance. That was the thing that stood out about him. Not that he had a good heart or anything like that. He was the outward appearance. Same thing with this. Israel really likes Absalom because of his outward appearance. Okay, verse 27. To Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter whose name was Tamar. So he names one of his daughters after his sister. She was a woman of beautiful appearance. Now Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem and did not see the king's face. So we have 2 years plus 3 plus 2. So 7 years total that David and Absalom have not seen each other face to face. Then Absalom sent to Joab. Here's another area where Absalom shows that he's not the best person either. And Absalom sent to Joab to send him to the king, but he would not come. So he sent again a second time to Joab, but he would not come. So Joab's is just kind of ignoring Absalom. Therefore he said to his servants, see, Joab's field is next to mine. He has barley there. Go and set it on fire. So Absalom's servants set Joab's field on fire. Then Joab arose, came to Absalom in his house, and said, why have your servants set my field on fire? Absalom says, oh, good, I got your attention. Absalom answered Joab, behold, I sent for you, saying, come here, that I may send you to the king. Why have I come to Geshur? It would be better for me to still be there. Now therefore, let me see the king's face, and if there is iniquity in me, let him put me to death. So Joab came to the king and told him he called for Absalom, and told him he called for Absalom, David did. Thus he came to the king and prostrated himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. All right, we got through it. Okay. So we'll see, though, here in just another chapter, Absalom really doesn't take it to heart. I mean, maybe he did for a little bit, we don't know, but here, pretty soon, he's going to try to take David's kingdom away from him. I think the thing when Absalom set Joab's fields on fire, I thought that kind of shows a little immaturity too. Joab did a lot and I don't know if Joab actually did it for Absalom or if he's just trying to prevent a civil war, which ends up happening anyway. But does anyone have any comments? We're kind of out of time. There's a lot with this one, so. Yeah.
It's easy to forget that. We just sort of see the details, but there is, they have a law.
Yeah. And, a lot of things they were trying to avoid, a lot of other people getting killed is going to happen because of it too. Yeah. Big mess. All right. Anything else? All right. That's it. Have a good week. You're welcome.